Cornelius Young, the VP of Claims Product Management at TrueMotion. Thanks so much for joining us on the Fraud Leadership Series today.
Hey, Andrew, how you doing? It's great to be here.
Hey, I'm doing well, thanks. You guys are doing some really cool stuff, and especially what I'm interested in, sort of bringing honesty back into the insurance industry through your technology. So let's take a modern approach to the age-old scheme of garaging here. What are you looking at, and how are you helping solve this issue for the industry?
I think it comes down to a couple of things. One is fighting fraud is going to be a competitive advantage for any carrier moving forward. And the best way to fight fraud is to have sophisticated methods to find it. And the more you can find and combat, the less likely you're gonna be to have fraud committed against you. And so, this is also about leveraging new sources of data. And in this case, location data is going to be a great new source of data that will be leveraged to combat fraud, whether it comes off the mobile phone or the connected car. It's going to be available at scale, and it'll help with things like garaging. That's a great example where you might be paying a premium in a garaging location in upstate New York, but you spend all your time downstate in Manhattan, which should be a higher premium. And so with location data, you'll be able to find that.
Absolutely. What about provider fraud? So when I think about provider fraud, obviously this is happening all the time, right? And typically we don't start to notice it or even look into it until there's some form of suspicion. And if I'm not mistaken, your technology is helping kind of elevate that earlier on to help spot that.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And, it gets back to location data. And when you look at provider fraud, it runs a couple of forms. There's provider fraud where the customer or the insured doesn't even know fraud's being committed. They may have gone to the chiropractor a couple of times. That chiropractor has electronic billing directly with the insured's carrier, and they bill the carrier 8 times. So in that case, the insured doesn't even know that 6 other bills for 6 other treatments were billed to their carrier. And with location data, we can see that. We would see, questionable providers. We can leverage NICB database for some of that, and identify that, you didn't go there 8 times. You, in fact, went twice. So that's sort of medical run-up and what we see. The other type is when it's in collusion with the different parties. So you might have an insured who's met with an attorney as well as a provider even before they file the claim, or even the date of loss. And so once again, location data at scale could be leveraged across in the cases where you're meeting with questionable providers.
I think a lot of times when we talk about fraud, we think of the insured defrauding the insurance carrier, obviously, and we're always looking for ways to stop this. But a lot of those same theories can really help the insured themselves. So I want to talk a little bit about ride sharing. Obviously, this has been a hot topic in the industry for a while. On one end, you may be lying about the fact that you're not ride sharing, or on the other end, you maybe think you're doing a legitimate thing, and you're looking for some extra money perhaps, and maybe don't have the right coverages. So how can insurers start to use some of this technology not only to fight fraud, but to actually help their insureds as well?
Yeah, it's definitely an issue across the industry today. There's no question that the insurance industry is subsidizing, probably in cases, Uber and Lyft. When you look across the different periods, there's a couple of things that are happening. One is Uber and Lyft are both providing insurance coverage to their drivers, but it tends to be at a much higher deductible. Something like $2,500 for an auto physical damage claim versus what you'd see on the personal side of $500 to $1,000. And so, taking that higher deductible, and then you look at the different periods in which a driver is sort of on duty. So there's period 1 when they have turned on the app and haven't accepted any trips yet. And then period 2 is they have the app turned on and have accepted a trip and are on their way to pick up the passenger. In both of those cases, we see subsidization. In those cases, if drivers get into an accident, there isn't a passenger in the vehicle, and so they go directly through their carrier. And it's really difficult for those carriers to determine if they're rideshare drivers if they're not telling them on the FNOL. And so The great thing about location data here is there's a distinct pattern that we see in professional drivers, whether it's ride sharing or delivery services. And so we can tee that up for the adjuster so that when they're handling the claim, they can ask additional questions to potentially identify it as ride share, and in which case the livery exclusion would apply and the claim could be denied.
Very interesting. In this world of all this data, it's interesting to see how you guys are putting it together and putting it to good use. So thanks for sharing the insights with us today. Appreciate it.
Definitely, and thanks for having me. It was great to talk to you. We'll see you.
My pleasure.